All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my good friend Bryce Covert. Bryce is a writer for The Nation magazine and the economic policy editor at Think Progress, all of which you can find at brycecovert.com. You can also follow her on Twitter at Bryce Covert. Bryce, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Thanks for having me back.
All right, so Bryce, we're going to start today by talking about how poorly some retail chains, some fast food chains treat their employees. We've talked about this a bit before on the show, but we're actually going to talk about how some of the employees are actually fighting back against this. You recently wrote about a class action lawsuit over at Think Progress against the clothing store Abercrombie and Fitch. Tell us all about it.
Yes, this is a very large class lawsuit against Abercrombie. It's about 62,000 employees that will be part of this class. They got certified, I believe it was last week. It's another instance where Abercrombie is getting in trouble for its look guidelines, what it requires of its employees in terms of clothing and appearance. This lawsuit alleges, the larger lawsuit alleges a whole host of basically policies that amount to wage theft, but the class got certified over a particular part where they are claiming that they were forced to buy Abercrombie clothes. And California law, where this lawsuit is based, stipulates that employees can't be forced into buying a company's products. So it got certified over that. Another part of this, though, is that there's a group of Abercrombie employees in California who make minimum wage, and by being forced to buy these clothes, which let's just stop and recognize that Abercrombie clothes are pretty expensive.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I didn't know that, but I believe you.
They're pretty expensive. I actually don't shop there because I'm too cheap, and it's also not quite my look. But they're pretty pricey, and they are saying that by being forced to buy these clothes out of their minimum wage compensation, out of their own pockets, they're effectively having their wages driven below the minimum. And this is true across the country. If an employer makes you buy something like a uniform or some other equipment for your job out of your own money and you make minimum wage and they don't compensate you, that is effectively wage theft because it means that you're then not actually getting the minimum wage, taken home. So they got this class certified. It's moving forward. Of course, Abercrombie denies that they're forced to buy the clothes. The look policy basically says the clothing has to look like current Abercrombie clothing, but doesn't have to be it. But the employers are saying that actually managers were telling them they had to buy the clothes in order to sort of boost Abercrombie sales. And it's just also worth remembering that the company just was dealt a blow with the Supreme Court over a Muslim woman who says that she wasn't hired because of her headscarf, which, again, Abercrombie, goes against their, look policy. So I think just this company is really getting into a lot of hot water over the way it requires its employees to appear.
Yeah, just the whole concept of so you have these low-wage jobs selling high-end clothes, and yet these employees, you'd think that, I mean, in fairness, if they're going to pay so low, what they should be doing is giving you clothes for free, essentially, because it's essentially, you're wearing this as essentially a uniform for our brand, for our store. You are a representative of our store, and our clothes are expensive, and there's no way you could afford these clothes on what we're paying you. At the bare minimum, they should be giving them, I mean, what's the solution to this other than obviously a good solution is fair wages and high wages, or also maybe some type of clothing allowance that you get every month. You buy a certain amount of uniform or something from a store. I mean, so what exactly? I mean, so the people in the class action lawsuit, they're asking for back wages, I'm assuming, and some damages. What are they actually looking to achieve through the suit?
Yeah, back wages, damages, and I believe changing this policy. I mean, one way to address this is to just loosen these pretty strict rules. I think Abercrombie, there are definitely other retailers that do this, but it seems that Abercrombie's rules about appearance are so strict as to, really put employees in a bind, and I think put itself in a bind now that this legal stuff is coming to pass. So you can just say, wear a white shirt and khakis or something,
right.
Like that. that's not the same thing, because you can get a white shirt and khakis anywhere for a variety of prices, as opposed to having to buy expensive Abercrombie clothing. Or like you said, they can say, okay, we want you in our clothes, so go buy some. We will, not charge you, basically, or we will do an extremely steep discount so that we're not driving down your wages below minimum wage. It's just a sign, I think, that a lot of retailers have very large control over their employees, and they exert it. And as you're pointing out, these employees are not making a whole lot of money. This is not, exerted control over people who are, making lots of money and have lots of other freedoms. These are low-wage employees who come to work under very, very strict guidelines, and I think that's rubbing up against the law.
Yeah. Well, let's go into a little bit of detail. I mean, because you mentioned it in passing, but they actually did. You were saying they got in trouble recently, Abercrombie and Fitch, over not allowing a Muslim woman to wear a headscarf. What exactly happened there, and what did they? Because they actually had that actually was a lawsuit that went forward, correct?
Yeah, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and then last month the Supreme Court found against Abercrombie, which is pretty notable given how sort of business-friendly the Supreme Court has been generally. What happened was that they refused to hire this woman who wears a headscarf, and the company claimed that because they didn't know the headscarf was due to religious reasons, they couldn't be sort of held accountable for bias based on religion, and the Supreme Court was like, no, that doesn't fly. You're refusing to hire this woman for something that is part of her religion. That's religious discrimination. They also they had something similar happen with a U.S. district judge in 2013 found that they had illegally fired a woman over her hijab. So it's got a track record of this kind of thing.
Not only that, there was also another lawsuit that they settled where essentially, I'm not entirely sure about the details of this, you can fill it in here, but were they essentially they were found that they were keeping like minority workers in the stockroom and not actually promoting them to like the floor or something like that? There was another case against them, correct?
Yeah, in 2004, they had to pay $40 million because of a lawsuit saying that they kept people of color from floor positions. I think, if you look at Abercrombie and its marketing materials and sort of its general brand, it's very white. I think about those bags where it's just like a string of men's naked torsos, and they all look very similar, and they're all very white. And I think, this is what it's been trying to promote. And so, I think this lawsuit was basically alleging it goes so far as to only put that kind of person on the floor and to sort of hide all of its other employees who don't look like that in the back, which is discriminatory and also just sort of bizarre. I mean, Abercrombie also as a company has been suffering for a while now in terms of popularity and sales. I think, this very I kind of want to call it Aryan look, because it's blonde, blue-eyed, muscly men who are always not wearing shirts. I just don't think it jives with a lot of American shoppers. I think it's really fallen out of favor. And so I don't actually think it would be in the company. I think it would be in the company's best interest to rethink these very strict policies, this weird, very strict branding about what kind of person it wants to promote. Maybe, let's get a little more diverse, because American shoppers are incredibly diverse.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Aryan thing, that's a pretty narrow market. I mean, if you're really kind of going for the Nazi thing, what are you going for, like, Klan members, neo-Nazis and stuff? And they probably don't wear Abercrombie. That's probably not, they're probably having, like, Confederate flag shirts and whatnot.
Yeah, and even white shoppers, are one slice of the consumer population, and they may be put off too by a very homogenous look. Millennials are incredibly diverse. They may say, like, this looks nothing like my friend group, and the clothes themselves may also have just sort of fallen out of fashion.